Hi, this is Professor Cummings. I wanted to do another video in this series that I just started called the Manufacturing News. Now, if you haven't seen my past video, I've actually created a playlist. I've created a playlist for all my videos. So if you want to get any updates, you just subscribe to the channel, and I have everything organized by the appropriate playlists, and you can look up any videos that might help you out here, particularly this series of manufacturing news. All I'm covering is things that show up in the news that have to do with manufacturing, engineering, or just technology in general. Now, I ran across two different articles, and they were both pretty interesting. They showed up in my news feed. They're both pretty interesting. One was in Forbes, and the title was "These are the skills that bosses say new college grads do not have." And then there was another one in a magazine or an online publication called Deco, and it says, watch the skills gap, see how U.S. executives see skills gap impacting the American workforce. Both of these are from last year, so Forbes was from May of 2016, Deco was from October of 2016. But both of them, I think, were relevant today because it covers a lot of the implications that the skills gap as it is now, is going to impact a lot of the American workers, and the situation is only going to exacerbate itself over the next few years. It covered a lot of the same information that you see repeated in several other publications, but it really emphasized at home. The thing I like about these two articles, these two publications, is this is no longer just some analysis or some study from some think tank. These are from the words of the managers themselves. So the top executives are actually saying this in a survey that was conducted, and it was conducted through one Deco was 500 senior executives. So let's see what more could be said here. So first, before we go into this, let's define what exactly is the skills gap. The skills gap, as far as this channel and my platform is concerned, is just the shortage of vocational, technical, and soft skills within the American workforce. So what we're concerned with is particularly the manufacturing industry, technology industry, and what skills are going to be required, not only now but further into the future, in order for people to be competitive in that particular industry. Now, why is this important? Why are we worried about this skills gap? Because in 2013 there was 500,000 jobs that went unfilled. So 500,000 jobs went unfilled, not because the jobs weren't there, but because there was not a skill, people with the proper skills to actually do the particular job. So what you can see is you wound up with a skills gap between people who could fill the jobs and then the tons of jobs that were left. And by 2027, it's expected to be 2 million jobs that are going to go unfilled. So, so the problem's only going to get worse. So there's actually, the technology is advancing. We're going more into, industry 4.0, where it's going to start having a much more competitive workforce, much more computer-based workforce. So the only way that you're going to, or anyone's going to compete in this, factory of the future, manufacturing of the future, technology in the future, is by updating their skills. That's the only way to bridge this particular skills gap. Now let's think idea, what does the skills gap look like? What type of workforce is there going to be in order for the skills gap to exist? What skills are missing? So when we think about the factory of the future, Industry 4.0, and again, I have a series on that, a couple of videos on that, and I can put a link to that for you. We're moving into a more efficient, more cloud-based, more automated manufacturing environment. So we're expected to be a lot more responsive, understand a lot more of big data using the cloud, a lot of more web-based programming. Factories are planning to be more flexible, more responsive, and a lot more interoperability between the different aspects of manufacturing, both between facilities and between customers and within the facility. So a lot more communication within a cell level, a lot more indication within the machine itself, and a lot more communications and activity within the organization as a whole. So what we're going to start needing is not people who who are just going to be operaters, or simply people who are going to work on an assembly line. We're going to need people who actually have the skill set that's going to meet this this type of new environment. All right. So what kind of skills are actually missing? Now, this is where the articles, particularly at Echo, what actually is being expected by these senior executives. So they did an interview with 500 senior executives. So that's a pretty significant number, 500 senior executives. And they asked what were some of the skills, some of the problems in the skill sets of the people who the current job pool. Now, the four things I captured. The first was 30% of those senior executives think that the manufacturing sector is going to be the most greatly impacted. The behind that, the next one was like 12%. I'll leave you a link in the description box, but it's like these smaller increments of impact when it comes to these skills. So manufacturing, and the real key of manufacturing is the fact that it not only produces products, but it actually demands a lot of different skills that are going to that are required, a lot that are going to take place in producing those products. So there is a lot of obviously machinists, tradesmen, quality personnel, engineering, but then there's also a lot of programming, a lot of communications that go into the manufacturing sector. So the manufacturing sector is still, even now, a huge employer of people. And now it's still going to be a huge employer of people, but the skill sets are actually going to start to become more and more advanced. So the skill sets are actually changing. So the manufacturing sector is actually seen as the going to be one of the biggest or most greatly impacted. The next of the four was that 44% of the candidates lack the creativity, the critical thinking, communication, and collaboration skills. Again, this is extremely important when it comes to just the factory of the future and 2.0, or excuse me, Industry 4.0. Not just the creativity, which I'm taking as another way of saying innovation, but it's the critical thinking skills, the problem solving skills. I've got videos on fishbone diagrams, different types of quality types of methods, so different ways of doing critical thinking. And then there's other things like communication and collaboration. So being able to interact with and express yourself clearly, particularly to your coworkers, both above and below you in terms of the supply chain. The third is 22% of the executives believe that there's a shortage in technical skills. So, separating this from soft skills, your human relation skills. Technical skills, meaning that they do need more people who are going to have trades skills, people who are going to have engineering skills. These are some of the biggest problems they're running into. So you got people who don't have the skill sets, either because of not getting the training that they required in college, not being in an apprenticeship program, or not taking it upon themselves to advancing those types of skills. And then last, 89% believe that corporate training programs can address the skills gap. So this one is a bit more optimistic. So there's two places that you can get your skills. You can either pursue them on your own, take your own initiative, or get into a company and get those training programs, get into those training programs. And this is one thing that the overwhelming majority felt like corporate training programs can actually address the skills gap. So sending you and paying for those colleges, paying for those college courses, paying for those online classes, paying for any type of certification, and getting you any kind of apprenticeship program that's actually going to make you valuable. Even then, you'd still need a certain baseline of technical skills in order to get into that corporate training program. But nonetheless, a lot of companies like to grow from within, and that is something that I think a lot of these senior executives still want to do. So what can be done? What can you do? Well, like I said, there's two different routes. One is within the company, and one is stuff you have to initiate on your own. So training programs within the company, again, one of the biggest ones is apprenticeship programs, employee reimbursement, paying for you to get some sort of training or certification. But again, online training programs are something you can initiate yourself. You can do this on your own. You can also go into online communities. You know, I have a community on Facebook, Infinity MFG, as well as my Google Plus page, Infinity MFG, the same name. Manufacturing skills and education, and then the engineering's reference. Both those are on Google Plus. That you can go and join and find out more about them. Something that kind of straddles that can get you some level of skill or some get your foot in the door is networking, going into networking communities, joining professional organizations, quality organizations, manufacturing organizations, the Society of Manufacturing Engineers, and then also getting training for certification. There's several certification programs that a person can become involved in and complete a certification, which essentially gets you the credentials that you need in order to pursue some of these positions. So again, if you're enjoying this series, you can go back and look as I build up this playlist. There should be one video in there now, and then this one. So there's 2 videos in our playlist. You can look on my channel. I have my entire channel broken up into a series of playlists. So whatever it is you're looking for, I probably have a video that can cover it. Also, if there's a video or a topic that you want me to discuss, or you want some level of training in, leave me a comment below, and I will, plan on doing a video on that. That's one of the benefits of this channel. I usually address issues that I see with my students. I'm a university professor, but I would really like to see what type of issues other people want with, online training, or just what they want to see on this YouTube channel, what I might be able to do to help you. Again, this is Professor Cummings. Go ahead and subscribe if this was helpful. Share it if you think it can help others. Thanks a lot for watching.